Alright, what's going on guys? So, down at the shed. Notice on the last video, when I took the head off, you couldn't actually see the cracks when I edited it. There's one there, so from valve to valve. There's another one right next to it. It's not quite as bad. And then we've got another one there, and another one there. So, there's the 4 cracks. Basically, it's just the 2 middle cylinders, and you can see there between those valves, there, and on this one here, we've got 4 cracks. We've got 4 decent cracks. Bit of a cunt. But I'm getting varied opinions. So some people are actually telling me that these cracks are alright. There's no issue with those. You know, like it's not leading outside the combustion chamber. It's not going to an oil gallery or a water feed. It's leaking a little bit of compression, but it would just go through to the other side of the head and you'd end up seeing it come out as blow-by. Now, I did a compression test on this thing just before Christmas on the 23rd of December, made a video on it. I had no idea that it was about to blow up, I swear to God. I've had it for 4 years and I bought a compression tester just because I got some super cheap auto gift cards for Christmas and I always wanted to do a compression test on it. No sooner or no later than doing a compression test on it, a couple of days later it starts using a couple hundred mils of oil, a couple hundred mils of water every time I went to drive it. Within a day or two that couple hundred mils turned to a couple of litres, and by then it was overheating and yeah, it was a shit show. She was buggered. But my theory is that those cracks were probably there before the head gasket blew, because what we've got here is number 1 cylinder 360, number 2 350, number 3 330, and number 4 370. So 1 and 4 are up around 370. The 2 middle ones have lost about 50 psi, and that would sort of, you know, make true with the 4 cracks that are present there. Those cracks could have been there years ago, you know, like I've had this thing plus T now and thrashing it for 4 years, 20 pounds of boost. I've seen EGTs, I've seen the EGT gauge max out at 1200. So, especially over the Napier Taupo road when I'm giving it the boot up the passing lanes, you know, trying to fend off a commie or something. A few people have told me to use the head off this motor, certainly a good idea. I did have a bit of a play around with it last night though. I put the starter motor on it out of Cliffy and cranked it over on the floor and done a compression test. So I've got 370, 380, which is pretty close. So 1 and 4 are basically the same compression, and then number 2 and 3 are both at 290. So that's about 90 psi of compression loss there. So this thing's definitely got a blown head gasket and or cracked head. Yeah. What I did find interesting is this is a genuine WLT, and obviously I would say the 1st and 4th cylinder, being that they're quite close together, I would say that is the compression of these things when they're factory. And 370 is the same numbers that the WL gave me, 369, and then down to 360. So it's funny, 1 and 4 cylinder have both held compression, and it's the 2 middle ones on both of these motors that have lost compression. What I will do though is fire this thing up. I've just been having a look at it, and there's only 1 wire coming off the injector pump, so that tells me that's probably the fuel solenoid. So I just need to run 12 volts to that. It should open up the fuel solenoid. I've hooked up this diesel filter off Cliffy, so it's got a limited amount of diesel in there to hopefully run for a moment or two. Yeah, get the fuck out of here. Okay, so we got that head off finally. I've had a look all over it, cleaned it up. That oil wasn't there when I looked at it, but I can't find any cracks in this head anywhere. This is the genuine turbo head. This is the non-turbo head, and I still can't find any differences between them either. Even the injectors on the turbo and the non-turbo have got the same part number stamped into them, so quite funny. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is buy a head gasket and some new head bolts, and we're going to slap this head on my block, and hopefully we're good to go. Still got to get this head cleaned up. I can't get it planed because, as someone pointed out, Brotang, it's actually completely flat the whole way across. So post in the comments down below how I should clean this up, because I'm actually still not sure how I should clean that head up before I re-put it on. So let us know what your ideas are down below, and I'll get head gasket, head bolts, and we'll throw this bugger back together. We should be good.